I think this is an interesting one because, yeah, different married couples have maybe some different views on this. The example that I'm thinking of is with the phones.
Yeah.
And, like we know married couples, or we've heard of married couples who will not exchange passwords to their phones.
Yeah.
And we may have spoken about this before on the podcast. I don't know if we have.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know. But, that's one of the things that we did pretty early on. Was it in marriage or even before?
I think when we were dating. And it wasn't even a big thing of like, oh, give me your Instagram password. I need to know what's going on. It was just your phone's my phone.
Yeah, like if I need something from your phone, I should be able to just get it, and vice versa. But, for us, we didn't make it into a big deal, but it still bred a lot of trust. Like, I don't think we've ever had any issues around, like, I don't know what you're doing, or I don't know who this person is, or like anything that could be perceived as a trust issue.
Yeah.
Like, we've had other things to work through, but I think that oversharing and that transparency has kind of made it feel like really secure from a trust perspective. And then I think the other thing is, and this can happen, I think, quite easily, whether it's because you're going to have two sets of families that are joining together, for example. So I might receive some news from my sister, right? That's not necessarily anything to do with you. Like, you don't really need to know.
Right.
It might be about another relative or whatever. And I could just kind of hold on to that and keep it moving.
Yeah.
But what I think where we've got to is just, and this just kind of happened naturally for us, is I say, hey, I just called my sister and she said, hey, auntie so-and-so is like going through a rough time financially, blah, blah, whatever it is. These are not true examples.
Yeah.
But just kind of having that, working that muscle of bringing everything to the table.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because I think when you hear this, it's easy to think, okay, share things that potentially threaten the marriage, like if you have an ex that texts you, or if I have an ex that texts you, or if a guy, whatever hits on me, like if I'm out. But it's even things that like may have nothing to do with you two as a couple, because it's how you do anything is how you do everything. So it's a muscle that has to be flexed, like bringing things to your partner, and you practice it by bringing something, that seems potentially irrelevant, like, oh yeah, like, my sister told me this news or whatever. So I think that's a really good point. But also even with things that are potentially like detrimental, like to like the marriage, like what's the quote, like tiny foxes spoil the, if you guys know the quote, put it in the comments. But like something about like a tiny weed gonna ruin the whole thing. Okay, like you have to watch out for like the tiny, like a tiny pest is gonna ruin your layers, basically, kind of thing. So it even
the vine.
Tiny foxes spoil the vine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it tiny?
Tiny foxes spoil the vine.
There you go. Tiny foxes spoil the vine. So it's basically the concept that like even something that seems small has the potential to grow into a bigger thing in marriage. And if you give the enemy a foothold, he will take everything. Like if you give him an inch, he will take a mile. Like if you leave room for, just this like conversation with like an ex or someone of the opposite sex that's like a little bit innocent, but it's a little bit flirty, like the enemy will take that and allow it to grow and to grow and to grow. Because I don't think things like affairs, in a committed marriage, like start off with like the full-blown thing. It's like allowing something, and then you kind of allow a little bit more, and then you allow a little bit more. So I think our general rule is like, I don't want to allow any room for any of that. So if I go out, a guy hits me, whatever, like I'll tell my husband, because I don't even want the appearance or like the hint of anything that could kind of like lead into something that's like untoward. And I think it's really helpful too for warding off things like unhealthy addictions. Like I can't remember, I saw a statistic somewhere about the percentage of people who are addicted to porn, and how a large percentage of those people are actually married people. And their partner doesn't know about it, compared to like if you have that almost like accountability within your partner that like, hey, like I slipped, it doesn't create room for you to kind of have these secret habits that grow into something huge, like whether it's alcohol, porn, whatever it is. But if you have that culture of like bringing it to your partner, I think that almost acts like as a check before things go too far, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that actually follows nicely from what we were saying about planning.
Yeah.
I think a part of planning could also be like, this is what I'm working on as a person, and this is what you're working on as a person.
Yeah.
Like, please hold me accountable.
Yeah.
Like, if your thing is like, I don't know, pornography has been a struggle in the past, and you want to be held accountable, then it's important to create that space where you can actually say, hey, you know what, I had 3 good days, but I had a bad day the following day.
Yeah.
Right? Or with anything, whether that's a shopping addiction or fast food addiction, I don't know. It could be anything, right? But actually creating those spaces so that those things that we're trying to root out, those behaviors, they don't have the oxygen and the sunlight and everything that they need to grow into this big, huge thing that kind of takes over and actually takes away from the marriage, takes nutrients from the marriage.
Yeah, and like you said, it could be anything, even like money, depending on how you like grew up. Like I know for me, there was all sorts of dynamics around like, you know, money growing up, and I remember something that I would see as like just maybe like a lack of transparency about like if something was like bought, not sharing it with the other parent. And that's like a habit that's so easy for you to like model, like if you're not in the habit of like, no, like tell my husband.